Hey everyone, my name is Kenny Johnston. I'm the Director of Product covering the ops stages here at GitLab. I wanted to do a walkthrough today of Okteto. Okteto is a tool that enables local development to Kubernetes environments. So instead of having to build and create your own Minikube or other environment locally in order to test your changes and how they would actually run in a production Kubernetes environment, or I guess a realistic Kubernetes environment, you can have Okteto create a cluster for you, and it kind of forwards the traffic from that cluster to your local environment and syncs the files that you're changing live in the background to the containers that are deployed in that cluster. It's a cool way to enable you to not have to do as much committing and pushing and waiting for a deployment, a new deployment in Kubernetes, and instead kind of do local adjustments to your application before doing a real push. It also has the ability to do the serving of the production application kind of a la Heroku, but it in this case, I'm most interested in the experience for a developer who's creating an application and using it in a pure dev environment way. So let's get started. I will share my screen. I'm just going to show the whole thing. Okay, let me close this. I'm going to get my Zoom window set up correctly. I will say I've done this. I've done the walkthrough that I'm about to do for a Go app previously, and so some of the things like installing the CLI, the Okteto CLI, are already going to happen, and creating an account in Okteto I've already created, and so there'll be a couple of those places where I'm going to follow the instructions, but it'll appear like I've already done it, and that's because I have. Okay, so first thing you do, install the CLI. Okay, I'll show you. I just added this folder here for Okteto, and there's actually a couple of different sample apps. So I'm gonna install the CLI, but then clone some repos that they suggest for the sample app in this main Okteto folder. Okay, so it's asking me to install. Okay. I didn't actually see anything build because it already had installed. Okay, so I've got that installed. Now I'm going to do Okteto login. It logged me in because I'd already had an account that I'd connected with my GitHub account. Here it is. Kenzie Johnston. There's a namespace I already created, and I'm logged in. All right, what's the next thing the docs tell me to do? Logged in as Kenny. Okteto namespace. Okay, so what this did is it took the fact that I had I lost that on Okteto. Took the fact that I had a namespace already created here, and that includes a cluster, and it now basically like downloaded all the credentials for that cluster into my on my local machine, and gave me a kind of Kubernetes config file that I can use for access. Okay, so updated context, gave me all that stuff. Okay, it added Kubernetes credentials to my config file and set it as the current one, just to make sure. I should do kubectl get all, and that will tell me if there are any resources. No resources found, but I am in the right namespace. Cool. There we go. I previously had kubectl applied or installed. Download a sample app. Okay, so this step 3 I've done. It involves getting installing a Go app, deploying it, and then seeing that in your remote, and then doing this remote development part. I think it's where Okteto really shines. But I'm going to do this with a Ruby app this time, since I've done the Go app before. Okay, so Okteto. And then I'm going to clone this samples file. Okay, so I've got that repo, and then in samples one, I'm going to go to the Ruby folder. Okay, so I've got a Ruby app. Deploy a sample Ruby app using the following command. So I'm going to apply the, looks like there's in a manifest folder, there's a, actually, I'll just show you. in this manifest file, there's a couple of Kubernetes YAML descriptions that will deploy the service and define the deployment. Go back. Oh. Okay, so this is actually going to deploy. It looks like it created a deployment called blog and a service called blog. Okay, both of those were created. Great. So now we are going to use the dev version of the Ruby sample app we just deployed as our remote development environment. To do that, we're going to do Okteto up. Let's see what this has already looked like here. I've got something called the blog. It's in progress. It's creating a volume. It's started the synchronization service. It's synchronizing. I can look at logs. It's giving me an endpoint. Okay, so this is just telling me that in my local environment, I can go there. Okay, so Okteto up starts the remote development environment, which means this, there's, oh, oops, wrong one. We're done with that one. Okay, so Okteto means that the file synchronization is created and a remote shell is started in your development environment. Build test on your application as if you're on your local machine. So, okay, so this is, now I'm logged in directly to that environment. File synchronization is started. What's interesting is I don't think I'm supposed to run it here. Yeah, it says to run execute in the remote shell. So maybe I do just need to wait for all these gems to install. See if that works. Okteto says I have this running environment. It's up and running. I guess the cluster is up and running. Still waiting for this to finish installing. Huh. Let's go look at this sample GitHub repo. Yeah, these are the same instructions built. You know what? I'm going to go back to the quick start and get a recording at least of the Go app. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to clone this repo. And then go to there, deploy it. Okay. I'm going to go back to my cloud and see another app here, it looks like. This gives me, okay, so this automatically gave me this is the live remote environment. Okay, got that. Oops, found that one. I'll put this one over. This one we're done with. This one. This one's gonna be over here. Okay. Okay, so yeah, not localhost. This one, live environment. Great. Okteto reminds me that it was through an HTTPS endpoint. That's cool. Okay, so back over here. Okteto up. So that deployed it to the remote environment. This, or sorry, the remote environment. Now I'm gonna do syncing between that remote environment and my local environment, my local dev environment. Meanwhile, anyone who's not me, I think, would be would continue to get this traffic. I think the intent is, oh no, okay. So when you do that, the live environment is no longer available. I'm just using my remote environment. I guess you could set those up in Okteto. Okay, so it's up. What happened is that container went there with file synchronization. Anything that changes is getting forwarded back to me. So, okay. So I'll run main.go. Okay, so now where did it tell me to go? Oh, okay, never mind. Not local. Okay, yeah, right. So this is now syncing changes. So I think the idea would be if I make local changes to these files, they will immediately show up in this remote environment, and I'll be able to get kind of like my local troubleshooting process. Okay, so I'm gonna open a new workspace. No, okay. This folder. Okay, so instead of saying hello world, I'm gonna say hello world from Okteto. Save that. And then it says, kill this And run it again. And then let's see what this remote says. Yeah, from Okteto. So made some changes, live updated to that remote environment. That's pretty cool. No commit, build, or push required. Okay, next I could debug the sample app directly in Rise and how to redeploy when you're done. Let's do debug real quick. Okay. Cancel main to go from remote shell. And then rerun in debug mode. Sorry, this is in VS Code. I don't have debug mode set up in VS Code, but presumably you could get your debug tools locally. That would be pretty cool. If you have VS Code debug set up, you would immediately could add breakpoints, and instead of having to run it locally on a locally configured Kubernetes cluster, you'd be running it on the remote Okteto cloud, but get all of your local debug tools. That's pretty cool. So now, let's see, we made those changes. I'm not. Just kill this whole process. Okay, so now I should be able to do an Okteto push. And that is pushing what's local, building an image and pushing it to the Okteto service. So now this should be the public version. What I don't understand is if I'm deploying locally, or if I'm developing locally, what happens to this service for others? Maybe everybody else is seeing the same thing and I'm just seeing differently because it was routing my traffic. I imagine that's what's going on. So for me, I always hit the same URL. If I'm in kind of local dev mode, I get traffic forwarded to and synced to a new container for my development. And then, but the production traffic is still going for everyone else to this site. And then I can turn off local dev and see my own environment locally. Just see the production environment from my local machine. I think that's what's happening. Roll back to go sample app to its original state. So now it's saying from Okteto. Let's see if I say this, do this command. Is it actually going to roll back Okteto down? Development environment deactivated. I don't think that did anything. Maybe that would be if let's try this. I'm going to open up the development environment. So that should now be forwarding me here. I'm going to make some changes. Hello, world from Okteto. Local development. Save that. Wait for this up to finish. Starting file synchronization. Okay. So now I have to do that. Build the So, okay, let's look when I'm here. Okay, yep. You don't have anything built yet locally. Okay, so now I've got this Okteto local development, but if I kill this and go to deactivating my development environment, so that connection is no longer there, and it's back to production environment. Okay, so that's kind of the workflow you would want to go through. You would work on your development environment, do Okteto up, work until it was in the state that you wanted, do an Okteto push that to your production environment. Presumably you'd also want to store it in source control somewhere. Or if you didn't want to push it, you just wanted to move back to the production environment, you could say Okteto down and it would go back to using what was last pushed to that environment. So I think that would be the workflow you would use here. And then you also get the local debug tools, which are pretty cool. You can customize it. Let's see what else they say. You can customize it. Anything else I can do in this UI? You can destroy environments. Yeah, so pretty straightforward. It does give you a nice workflow for developing in local environments. I think instead of doing Okteto push, you would want to commit your code, but you could do it without syncing any changes to your local repository, which seems a little dangerous. You wouldn't be doing any tests, but yeah, you could publish. But I think for a purely development experience, having a remote cluster that you're syncing changes to, so you can really quickly get feedback into how your application looks and performs as a Kubernetes deployed application. So let's say you're trying to test your Kubernetes manifests and other configuration files, you'd be able to do that really quickly as opposed to having a Minikube installed and not really know how, and having a good sense, but not having as much immediate feedback into whether your application is building and performing correctly. So really cool tool, super interesting, especially from a development experience perspective. That's all I have. Thanks, everybody.